Everyone, let's all pay our respects to Luang Por. 3 bows together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow.
All right. We start with some meditation as usual. Sound is okay, huh? All right, great. Okay. One of the last time we met, those of you who were here, I was talking about that that common analogy, space form, emptiness form, and the ideas of space are very helpful to bring into meditation. There's various ways to do that. And one of the things we get very attached to, well, the sense base that we are that our grasping manifests through is all of them, but sight especially is a very kind of grasping sense base. So to make sure, if you're doing body meditation, to include the eyes in the object of awareness. So in this meditation, I'll first just do the usual thing I do of contemplating objects in awareness. That's an important perspective on space. And that, I've done that so many times, I'm sure you're all used to it. And then I'll do somewhat of a body meditation and some emphasis on the eyes. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. We'll sit for half an hour or so. So let's start. Let's set my little clock. So take a posture that's comfortable, that you don't have to fidget, and that you're not experiencing a lot of pain. Bring awareness to sound. Notice that very intention reveals the silence of knowing. Listen to sound. Emphasize the listening rather than the quality of sound. Perceive sound as in awareness. So awareness is space, conscious space. Sounds are changing within that. These are just ways of perceiving. Listen to sound. Feel your breathing. Let the breath be feeling. Perceive breathing as in awareness. Notice the silence of knowing. Perceive the breath in awareness. Back to sound. Listen to sound. Emphasize the listening. Be the silent knowing. Feel the breathing. Emphasize the knowing. And it's the same silent knowing. Be that knowing. Bring attention to your mouth. Let the feelings in the mouth become conscious in awareness. So you're not, it's not like a hard focus where you're trying to see something. You're just allowing whatever feelings are in the mouth to become conscious. So feel the lips. Feel the gums. Feel the tongue. Inside the mouth, the cheeks. Now, as you do this, do you tighten your eyes, trying to look for some sensation? Just let the sensations or feelings manifest as they will. Bring attention to your ears. Feel the outer architecture of the ears, the outer structures. And if there's nothing there, that's fine. It's the awareness itself we're emphasizing rather than the object. Then localize your awareness to the ear canals inside the ears. And this is in awareness. Be the silent knowing. Feel your nose, the bridge of the nose, let that become conscious. Feel the nostrils. Again, do you squeeze your eyes trying to see something? Just let feelings manifest. Feel the whole nose as a mass of sensations. Be the knowing. Objects change, knowing is the same. Now bring attention to your eyes. Now because there is so much tension in the eyes, it's good to have exercises of relaxing. One way to do it is, first of all, imagine that you're wearing those funny glasses that we had as kids. Those are the huge, huge lenses. Imagine you're wearing those and expand your eye cavity to the size of those lenses. So you expand the eye cavity. Let that just kind of work on you. Expanding the eye cavities. We go back to the eyes themselves. Feel the eyes. And now just imagine that the eyes are dropping out of your sockets with nothing holding them. Now feel how that affects your brain. Eye sockets, eyes. And you might notice that you start to feel the optic nerve in the back of your neck, the back of the head. Expand, so you expand the eye cavity. Let the eyes drop down. Notice the effect on the brain. And then perceive that you are behind the head. The head is in awareness. And make that perception really broad, like you're covering the whole back wall. And the body is in awareness. So go back to the mouth. Feel the mouth inside the mouth. And let that become conscious. And be the knowing. Localize your attention on the ears. So I'm not suggesting you're kind of concentrating time to see something in a really highly focused way. The idea is space, openness, localizing attention, but just letting the sensation come into consciousness. So we're emphasizing silent knowing. Nose, bring attention to the nose. Do you tighten the eyes when you notice the nose? So the attention is very open, welcoming. And again, the exercise with the eyes. So the eye cavities expanded. The eyes themselves dropping out down. How does that affect your brain? Let your perception be behind the head. You might notice the optic nerve at the back of the head. And then let awareness be the space which knows the head in awareness. So you could do that with the whole torso, or you could just let go there and be the knowing. And then a really good thing to notice is how thought contracts the brain, contracts the eyes. So awareness around.
Thank you, Luang Por. We'll now request for Dhamma talk. Brahmacaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjaliha Divarahaya Chata Santi Dasata Parajaka Jatika Desetu Dhamma Anukampi Mampaja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Uttang dhammang sanghang namassami. Is anyone going to watch? Time, please.
Yeah.
This is broken. Go. I just need to get a watch. Hold on. Don't go away. Batteries are done. So hello, everyone. Nice to be with you again. Hope you're well. We're well. Are we well? We're well. There we go. Thank you. So this meditation on the eyes it's quite interesting because a lot of our grasping is held in the brain, in the eyes. There's a lot of tension there. And we don't, like in Buddhism, we don't want to just relieve tension. It's not just a relaxation exercise, but we're trying to, as Luang Por might say, we're trying to return to our real home. And if we're always kind of caught in thought and the way thought manifests in the body, then we don't really have the kind of spaciousness of awareness. We don't perceive that. So the perceptions of space they're kind of enigmatic, but we have them. Like if you came into this library that we have in Tisarana, first thing you might say, wow, that's really spacious. So we do notice that. But what really draws our attention more are the objects. So to abide in the witnessing of space, you do that maybe first when you come into this room, but then you start getting interested in the art, in the books, in the floor patterns, in the sound of the air conditioning. So the objects of our experience are what draws our attention, and necessarily so. And where our attention is very much kidnapped is through desire. We want the pleasant, we don't want the unpleasant. So one of the ways that you could consider Buddhism, that it's a study of desire. You know, what is desire? What is its function in our life? It's not a dismissal of it. It's really an education and an understanding. If you meditate with an agenda of trying to achieve something, you get very frustrated. Like this idea that I presented, it's just an idea, one of millions that kind of are available. But to taste the silence of knowing isn't that difficult. So it's not very far away. You could have any sound or any bodily experience. It becomes more difficult when the bodily experience is very painful. It becomes more difficult when the auditory experience is painful or exciting or whatever. So a lot of the suggestions on meditation are try to find neutral situations which aren't all that stimulating and learn how to abide in the space of awareness rather than be distracted by the events. And the events of life, we'll always be paying attention to them. We'll always be looking at beautiful things and trying to sort out ugly things. That'll always be part of our life. So the analogy I was giving last time was the analogy of the book, the white pages of the book, and the print on the book. It's a common analogy you find. And we tend to pay attention to the text and not to the white of the page. And that's the space. Or then the lady asked the question, where similar kind of analogy. You see the blue sky and the clouds, and you're like a child distracted by the clouds, but you don't notice the blue sky. So these are common analogies. And these aren't like philosophical absolutes. They're not really meant to conceptualize intellectually. They're trying to draw us to perceptions which are uncommon. The perception of space is not uncommon, we know it, but to abide in witnessing that is kind of uncommon. And then we try to get those perceptions of space into some of the body meditations. So you feel, some aspect of your body feels good. And go to that and imagine it full of space. Now that's kind of a weird way to talk, but you have to just sort of try these things out and say, how would that work on me if I introduce perceptions of space into the feelings in the body? And then you experiment and see if that's fruitful. So this meditation around the eyes is very interesting, and how the consciousness can feel like it's behind you, and the heart chakra opens, and different variants of what happens. But that initial instruction is just leading your perceptions to a place of not to a place of desire. If you do any meditation with some end game, that desire itself will be unattended to and will be frustrated, because you won't really understand what you're doing. So meditation is done hopefully without desire, without some agenda of attaining. That's difficult because we've had nice experiences. We want to repeat them, but you have to be careful and start. It's like Roshi Suzuki's statement, Zen mind, beginner's mind, which many of people my age read in the good old days. There's that sense of the beginner mind is what Luang Por is always pointing to. It's like this, and then when you perceive, and that was like this, then you also perceive the silence of no, and then seeing where that, well, how can you sustain that? And the reason we can't sustain it is because of the habits of distraction. The habits of distraction are much based on desire. So if you're grounded in Theravada Buddhism, you should have a good understanding of the Four Noble Truths. If not, it's a good thing to study and to get the concepts down. Concepts are important. But once I have met people from traditional Buddhist countries who have studied the Four Noble Truths in high school, and I ask them what they are, and they just recite them like you would in high school. But they're not really contemplative. So I asked them, well, what do you mean by that? They said, well, it's just this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. But that doesn't really liberate you. What liberates you is when you take on a teaching, and then you use it as a kind of inner inquiry. What does that mean? Why is that important? And then you observe through that kind of structure, intellectual structure. So you could say I'm a connoisseur of ways of presenting desire, or I'm an aficionado of ways of presenting the Four Noble Truths. You know, once you use a teaching, you just, oh yeah, it's there too, or it's there too, or no, I disagree with that. No, because you have a basis of your own contemplation, and the disagreement isn't dogmatic. You think, no, it can't work. It can't possibly work. That doesn't make sense. And so the ability we have to critique things or understand other traditions is not a judgment. It's just finding your way through all the different teachings you have, a way that works. And so if you take on Theravada Buddhism, it's a good way to look at it as the study of desire and the understanding of desire, and then why we talk about letting go of desire. So one of the readings which I often do on retreats, and I return to again and again over the last 30 years, I think this particular reading is from a teacher called Jean Klein, and he was a European doctor, musicologist, and had, I thought, very profound insights, but also a very, for me, appealing way of talking about it. And when when I come across something that I think I understand, and then a teacher offers me another perspective, I find that quite exciting, actually, even after 30 years, because it's speaking to the truth that I find important. So let me read this for you and see if we can kind of unpack it a bit. Jean Klein died in 1988. I think he was about 80 years old. He taught awareness practices, and a lovely man. We must therefore begin with the analysis of desire. What do I want? Can my desire be gratified by the possession of objects? So objects here, I would say not just a new Lexus or a new iPad or a chocolate cake. I would say it's more profound than that. So objects are emotions, memories, visual images, environmental sounds, the whole gambit of sense experience we have. Objects, are they what I seek? Do they contain what I seek? Let us observe what happens when a desire is satisfied. We see that the gratification of a desire is nothing but its death. And therefore, when we are in search of bliss, we really are pursuing nothing but the death of desire. So if you've studied the Four Noble Truths, that's second and the third noble truth. The third noble truth is Nirodha, cessation of desire. Right? So do you ever think of it that way? Is that what we're doing? Am I practicing for the end of desire? Or am I practicing to attain something? So then you have a conflict, because you have a lot of attainment talk in Theravada Buddhism. And then, but you also have this, you have Nirodha, the cessation of desire is synonymous with Nibbana. So you have to look in your own practice and think, well, when I sit down and I meditate, or my general spiritual attitudes, am I trying to get something? Am I trying to attain to something that I have heard would be nice to attain? And how does that fit in with the death of desire? And if you ask that way, rather than make a judgment, you will notice if you in fact are meditating with an agenda of becoming and getting and obtaining something. Not that there aren't attainments, not that there aren't realizations, not that these things don't take place, but how do they take place? Do they take place through acquisition, or do they take place with letting go? So that is kind of important to look, obviously, in your own mind and to see how you practice. We see that the gratification of a desire is nothing but its death, and that therefore, when we are in search of bliss, we really are pursuing nothing but the death of desire. This proves that our ultimate desire is non-desire. But non-desire appears to our normal consciousness as being blankness. And yet it is in this blankness that we must try to probe with open eyes so as to discover its true nature. So if I sit in this room and I feel the space of the room, so for a second there, or whatever amount of time, non-desire will be there, or desire will be absent, because it's pleasant. You feel kind of gratified, fulfilled. But if I just sit in this room and just sit here, pretty soon, what happens to most is the thoughts start coming. What am I going to do tomorrow? And I shouldn't have done that yesterday. And the whole 9 yards starts to spin out in terms of fantasies and memories. And so it's actually very, very hard to just sit in non-desire, to just know the way things are. And yet it is in this blankness that so he's describing non-desire blankness. I don't know if you can relate to that. It's not the blankness of that you're not perceiving anything. It's just the blankness of not, I think, being engaged with sense experience through desire. And yet it is in this blankness that we must try to probe with open eyes so as to discover its true nature. In fact, this nothingness is experienced by everybody in infinitesimal gaps which occur between thoughts. Each time one desire dies, giving place to the next. So is that true for you? Do you notice the gaps between thoughts, first of all? Or is it just one continual stream of consciousness that there's no chunks or spaces in? So that's why these suggestions of meditating, like deliberately listening to a sound, but it's not about the sound. It's about the silent knowing that you start to introduce space into the stream of consciousness. You start to notice space rather than it just being a one constant thought after another, drama after another, worry after another, fantasy after another memory. And that's a big thing in human consciousness, to be able to step back and know, oh, this is thinking. This is a thought. Thought feels like this. There is a space between thought A and thought B. That's very, very important. And you can introduce that, which we do in meditation. And that's not getting rid of thought. And that's one of the great problems we have as meditators, is we get engaged with the thinking by trying to get rid of the thinking. So that's why I was using that rather odd suggestion, is presence ever absent? So that you no longer pursue the trap of trying to get rid of thought or have a perfect thought or all that, but you step back into the space. That's what that suggestion was about. I don't know if it works, but it works for me. In fact, I have it as my screensaver. When if I'm not at the computer for 10 minutes, boing, it goes on. Is presence ever absent? Which I think is very cool. Anyway, that's a digression. But if from time to time, anyway, so the gaps between thoughts, does that make sense? Is that a kind of reasonable thing that you can observe? Or is he always thinking? And I think all of us can observe. We can observe the space of thoughts when thoughts get interrupted. So if you're meditating and you're caught up in some worry about tomorrow, whatever it is, and then a car honks its horn outside, you'll awaken. You'll be there. That'll be the place of no thought. That's kind of an awakening, isn't it? Now, if you just listen and sustain listening, then you also sustain the silence of knowing, of no thought, the gap between thoughts. If, however, you're just trying to control thought and get rid of thought, which a lot of meditators do, then the sound of the horn will alert you. You won't notice the gap. You'll go to trying to get rid of thinking. And then you'll try to get rid of thinking. That'll be unsuccessful, because it's not the perception of thought coming and going. It's a desire not to have thought. So how can you get to the space which is always there? Silence of knowing is always there. If from time to time we experience moments of stillness and deep attention turn towards these gaps of nothingness, little by little the emptiness will reveal itself as being full, and finally as supreme plenitude. And so the emphasis on silence. All religious traditions, if they're authentically contemplative, will emphasize silence. And silence is so important. And it's not just the silence of environment, it's the silence of the gap between thoughts. And all of us have tasted that. And that's why we feel so frustrated by thought, because we've tasted the silence of the gap and the silence of emptiness, I think. I expect we have. And then we look for that as a desire. And that's the problem. It's not the thought, it's the desire not to have the thought. So if you are, say, you're contemplating desire all the time, you're looking at that, not just analytically or judgmentally, but just as a background noise which is going on, kind of judgment of things, not wanting, you're constantly aware of that, then you'll see the desire to get rid of thought is a problem. It's not the thought, it's the desire to get a thought. And that gap will become more apparent. And then that emptiness which he's talking about will be more, you'll be drawn to that just because it's very interesting. One should adopt this attitude as often as clearly as possible. So again, that phrase, if from time to time we experience moments of stillness and deep attention turn towards these gaps of nothingness, little by little the emptiness will reveal itself as being full, and finally as supreme plenitude. One should adopt this attitude as often and as clearly as possible, thereby allowing it to be more penetrating and effective. With this in view, one should be available, ceaselessly questioning oneself, calmly observing one's own behavior without passion. One should be available. That's where I got that phrase. I use that phrase a lot, watchful and available. And that's a kind of really interesting way to put, and I think that's why different language around our traditional language of Buddhism, of mindfulness and sati sampajanya. Those are good words. But when you get a different word in it, you kind of, you as a contemplative, you say, is that what I'm doing? When I'm practicing mindfulness, am I doing that or am I trying to control? And I certainly, I remember like very, very early on doing walking meditation in Thailand as a young monk and noticing that when I noticed thought, I would concentrate on my feet. I said, wait, why am I doing that? Because that seemed logical. You concentrate on your feet to stay present. But what I was doing, I was trying to get rid of thought. It was a little thing, it wasn't a huge thing, but that actually made more thinking. So then I tried to control my mind by walking very deliberately and getting from A to B and B to A and doing walking meditation. But it was very unsuccessful because I wasn't really mindful. I was trying to control. And what I was trying to control was the emotional mess my mind was in as a young monk and all the kind of thinking. And then Luang Por just welcome it all, welcome the thoughts, and get the attitude of welcoming and awareness rather than the attitude that I have to control myself so that I don't have thinking. So suggestions of silence are kind of dangerous that way because it becomes kind of attractive. Oh yeah, I want the silence. And the reason I don't see the silence is because I have these thoughts, so I have to get rid of these thoughts, and it becomes all fraught with desire. So understanding desire is so very important. It's understanding it. And that's what I think he's pointing to. With this in view, one should be available, ceaselessly questioning oneself, calmly observing one's own behavior without passion. A new and non-objective outlook will then progressively prevail on us. So what is a non-objective outlook? Well, to me, when I suggest to you, listen to sound, and I say, don't worry about the sound, be the knowing, be the listening. Make the listening important rather than the quality of sound. And then I say, then feel your breathing. And I say, don't worry about the quality of breathing, be the knowing. So that's a non-objective, I think what he's saying. It's a non-objective knowing because it's about the knowing rather than the object you are knowing. So it's not about the emotional content or the sound or the quality of breath, it's the knowing itself. And that to me is moving to the emptiness of the page rather than always be caught up in the text, in the content of the text. A new and non-objective outlook may then progressively prevail on us, and we may come to understand that we are not the ego. We may then, with a complete and new awareness, taste the unexpected flavor of those moments of non-desire, which will be revealed as plenitude, silence, and peace. This flavor, which is only fleeting at first, will become more constant and vigorous until that time when it will appear as a reality, which carries us, enfolds us, and is our very substance. So that's his way of talking about Nibbana. Or because Nibbana, Nirodha, cessation of desire, that's synonymous. That's the way Nirodha is synonymous with Nibbana. And so he's saying the flavor of that comes about through the flavor of non-desire, which fits in with Nirodha, if you studied the third noble truth. What is Nirodha? Now, if I'm trying to get rid of my desires, if I'm coming from a sort of puritanical idea that desire is wrong, and is bad, and that, I've got a desire problem and I have to get rid of my desires, well, that's another desire. That's another self-identity. And we do that too, right? We do that to ourselves, it's kind of self-identities and become judgmental of desire. But this isn't the judgment of desire. It's seeing desire as an object and then choosing actually not to engage it and just to witness it, not to engage it with thought. And as you witness it, you're taken to the non-desire of knowing, to the silence of knowing, to the stillness of knowing. Then desire is not a threat. Quite often, I think as humans, especially as contemplatives who, we're living good lives. We're doing our very, very best to be good citizens on the planet. good family members and good monks and meditate and all that. You're trying all that. And then sometimes negative things can be very threatening. You feel jealous, or you feel petty about something, or you feel annoyed about something. And that can be very threatening to someone who has a heartfelt love of goodness, but also has a strong sense of idealism. And then you can try to get rid of it. And that won't work either, because it's still desire. So if your bottom line contemplation is attachment to desire and the end of desire, then you're starting to come to the witnessing as opposed to the particular experience you're having. This takes a while to kind of become second nature. It does become second nature if you're a contemplative. You go back to the Four Noble Truths, and suffering comes up in some kind of way, then you ask yourself, what's the desire? And then you observe. And that takes a while to become intuitive or automatic, but it does. It gets there. And then the experience is important, but also the contemplative attitude. Oh, what's the desire? What do I want that I don't have? What do I have that I don't want? We still function, we still do. That doesn't mean that you don't eat or you don't sleep, but you're just understanding and investigating desire as an important part of our human experience, and then contemplating the non-desire. So this flavor, which is only fleeting at first, will become more constant and vigorous. Until that time, then, it will appear as a reality, which carries us, enfolds us, and is our very substance. So I would say this is Luang Por Cha's, this is our real home. This is, I think, what Luang Por Cha is pointing to. The bliss which is then experienced. Now, bliss is a very dangerous word, isn't it? Because as soon as a monk says bliss, or a teacher says bliss, he says, I want that. I want that bliss stuff. And then everything in your practice is to try to get, what do we call it? We call it piti, get bliss, I think. So we have words for it, right? Oh, did you get any piti? It's like, did you get a frappuccino? It's got that kind of mindset, which is looking for this stuff. And then you're in desire again. So like, that's why I think the forest tradition, like Luang Por Cha, really emphasizes letting go, letting go, letting go. Because the words of attainment or bliss or that, they're so seductive. Because that's what you want. I mean, you don't come to meditate to be bored, do you? You kind of, in the back of your mind, a little bit of bliss, please, tonight. That would be nice. And that's obviously very, very dangerous. But when you talk, when one talks with the Wombo or whoever, you sense there is something profoundly well about them. But in the Thai forest tradition, they don't tend to emphasize that, because I think the danger of attachment, such like. The bliss which, but I'm still using it because he's saying it. The bliss which is then experienced is entirely different from what we usually call happiness. For at this level of consciousness, one cannot even say, I am happy, since a consciousness which establishes a distinction between a subject and an attribute would be a dual consciousness. We are now speaking of the peace which passes understanding. That's a Christian phrase. So what does he mean by that? A consciousness where there is a self and an I. Well, sense consciousness is like sense happiness is very much dependent on the object. So like the temperature now is, we put the air conditioning on, it's kind of like Singapore just now. We do get Singapore weather every now and then. And so it's very pleasant. It's very, very pleasant. And if I turn the air conditioning off and I close the windows, it will become unpleasant. Now that's the happiness of sense experience. And in sense experience, I tend to attach to and say, oh, I am uncomfortable. I will turn on the air conditioner, which is valid, and I do that. But what he's talking about is something which is more the background, which is not that. So without dismissing the very good karma that I have of having an air conditioner, I'm going to use it. I've done enough ascetic practices in Thailand that roasted my brains out. So I don't mind doing that. But if it fails, if we have a power failure and it's uncomfortable, do I have a refuge? Well, yes. Well, discomfort feels this way. And then desire comes up now because I'm used to the air conditioner. Oh, and this is the desire not to have discomfort. So the bottom line takes you back to desire all the time. So the events change. Excuse me. They come and they go. They're pleasant and the unpleasant. We're not denying that. But do we have a refuge which is larger, bigger, and actually more profound? We do. And that's the awareness of desire, the letting go of desire, the cessation of desire, Nirodha, I would say. So carry on. We have mentioned watchfulness and availability. And as you know, those who kind of listen to how I talk, I found these two words incredibly interesting. Very, very interesting. Watchful and available. Because I can relate to them. They're not Pali words. I'm not mystified with them. I know what that means. It's available. And that word for me really, really helps me to understand what we mean by attachment. So the word attachment gets misused as an idea that we should not like anything. Like, you know, sometimes you get this weird question of, I'm attached to my children. Well, I hope so. I hope you're a good parent, take care of them. So attachment gets sort of misunderstood as like, I don't know, it's a hard one to understand. But availability, now that's interesting, because if you're available, you're not preoccupied. And what is preoccupation? Past and future, planning, worrying, self-disparagement, resentment, fantasizing, online shopping in your head, whatever it might be, it's preoccupation. You're preoccupied with the sankharas. You're preoccupied with objects, with events, and they're driven by desire. That's driven by desire. So availability is a very good way of thinking about letting go or non-attachment. Right? If you're preoccupied with worrying about what you're going to do tomorrow, it's either past or future, isn't it? Most of it, and you notice that, well, that's not available. What would availability feel like? And then you're back to Luang Por Sumedho. It's like this. It feels like this. You're available, watchful, simple language, but for the contemplative, it's a language that evokes something which is constant. You need to constantly do this. We were reading one of the talks in Luang Por Cha's Bodhinyana book, and he said constant effort. What is constant effort? If I perceive meditation and spiritual life as control, that's impossible. But awakening and being available, that I can do. I mean, it's hard to remember. The remembering is hard, but it's possible. So I might feel disgruntled, but I can be available to the feeling. Oh, disgruntled feels this way. It's like that. So it's not a judgment about what you're feeling, but it's a sense of witnessing to what you're feeling. We have mentioned watchfulness and availability. It must be understood that, that these must be perfect in their quality. The quality and the purity of attention which result are the essential conditions of success. So why is that important? Well, because those qualities aren't about desire. The quality of your attention isn't to get something or get rid of something. It's not bhava tanha or vibhava tanha. And it's not kama tanha. You're not caught up. So the quality of attention is what we train in, rather than worry about the quality of the experience. So all of us say in our human interactions, we'll have moods which are ugly, right? And we have learned, hopefully, as human beings, we don't have to act on them. But there still can be ugly. You know, you can be grumpy and negative, and oh yeah, not a good time to say anything. And we have that capacity, or we can feel very ebullient and connected and charismatic, and we can use that to connect with people. But our bottom line is a kind of attention, a quality of attention rather than a quality of experience, a quality of attention rather than a particular kind of emotion called Buddhist whatever. Buddhists are always this way. No, that's not true. Buddhists are always changing. So the kind of danger we have as contemplatives and aspiring beings to goodness is that we are, again, threatened by anger or jealousy or fear. And we think that metta bhavana is something we should be able to do all the time. But that's not human. Human is, bumping your head against the bookshelf and being angry at the bookshelf, even though the bookshelf never intended it. Yeah, you feel angry or you feel disappointed, say, or whatever it is. And that's just very human. But the quality of attention does not depend on the quality of experience and of the emotion or whatever. So the quality and purity of attention which result are the essential conditions of success. The exercise of this pure attention implies the complete elimination of all elements from the past, thus allowing the authentic purity of the present to be completely grasped. That's very difficult. Anyone disagree? That's very, very difficult. But yet you hear it through all the traditions, present moment awareness, whether it's Christian mysticism or Sufism or Theravada Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta, they're all talking about the importance of presence. And how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, you notice the gaps between thought. You emphasize the gap between thought, because thought is what creates past and future, self, and you make that intention. You make that intention to notice the quality of, because when you notice you're thinking about the past, that's the present. And actually thought stopped. So you're valuing that moment rather than judging yourself that you shouldn't be thinking. That's vibhava tanha, that's trying to get rid of. So you start to value the gaps of presence. Well, yeah, that's it. Well, that's enlightenment. Say that, use that. If someone disagrees, just tell them to send me an email or whatever. But use language which is quite uplifting. That's it. I've got it. Nothing else to do. Listen. Yeah. And that even if it's like he's saying in the book, he's saying infinitesimal gaps in the beginning, but they're very important. They're the moment of awakening. And if you make them important, you say, oh, that's it. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. In those moments, they become more profound because you've encouraged them. You've encouraged them in your mind. So the exercise of this pure attention implies the complete elimination of all elements from the past, thus allowing authentic purity of the present to be completely grasped. We must forget everything and wait, yet wait for nothing. We must forget everything and yet wait and yet wait for nothing. You can do this best in an airport. Now, airports are very good because if you manage to get through the luggage, to get through the security, right? And all that trauma that you go through, you're there usually like 10 hours before you have to fly because they're telling you, this is my experience, by the way. So you're there and you look at the, oh God, another 3 hours and I've got a 10-hour flight. Ooh. And then you sit there and say, oh, waiting, but waiting for nothing. Now, I'm certainly waiting for the flight, but I got 3 hours. So then you start to just do that. Oh, this is the feeling of not 3 hours, because that's the feeling you tend to attach to. 3 hours, 2 hours and 50 minutes. You do that, you go crazy. But then you just, for those of you who do these kind of travel things, I don't think anyone travels anymore. You use that time to do like just waiting, but waiting for nothing. And that takes you to the silence and the space of the mind. And in other kinds, dentist office. Dentist office is very good because if you're terrified by the dentist or something. Right, so let me do that paragraph again. The exercise of this pure attention implies the complete elimination of all elements from the past, thus allowing the authentic purity of the presence to be completely grasped. We must forget everything and wait, yet wait for nothing. This entails a state of complete receptivity, which seizes and is open to the complete eternal and perfect newness of each moment. This entails, again, a state of complete receptivity, which seizes and is open to the complete, eternal, and perfect newness of each moment. So this is non-desire in a big way, big time. And that's what I'm trying to help people do when I say listen to sound and be receptive to the sound. Sound is in awareness. So that word receptive is I know Luang Por uses it, a lot of monks use that now, to get to that attitude where it's not about the object. It's not about good or bad. It's not about comfort and discomfort. It's about the quality of attention and trusting in that. So whether you do breath meditation, or you do metta bhavana, or you do body meditation, or space, whatever, it's that receptive quality. Waiting for nothing, receptive, available, watchful. What does that language do for you? If you use that language, or what kind of language do you use to encourage your practice? Is it judgmental? God, not getting anywhere with this. Come a basket case today, or oh, this is really difficult, this meditation. That's all the sense of self and judgment. And then you say, oh yeah, this is what difficulty feels like. You come back to Ajahn Sumedho's suggestion. Finally, one final paragraph. It is also important that the body should be in a state of perfect relaxation, as the slightest attraction or repulsion results in tensions which impede the purity of attention. And that's difficult too, because if you're holding your body in a way of rigidity and tension, your desire system is going to want to do something about that. So that's why I think Yoga Nidra is very helpful if you don't go to La La Land, but that's all right too. But like, like, I think that's one of the reasons, because I was reading this yesterday and thinking a lot about it. And so the meditation around the eyes is very helpful for that. A lot of tension is held in the brain. You're not aware of the brain, but the brain is kind of a sponge. It's doing something up there. And when you bring attention to the eyes, and you are aware of the eyes as an object in awareness, and that the head is an object in awareness, that takes you to a really healthy state of relaxation. If you try to relax, you probably get more tense. This is the irony of it. Okay, you know, someone says to you, meditate, now relax. And what up, you get more tense, trying to relax. So you're not trying to relax, but you're noticing tension. So it's not from desire, it's from awareness. And as you are aware of the eyes and let them expand, you're aware of the eyes, of the cavities of the eyes and the eyes themselves and the space behind, you start to get a sense of how much tension there is in the brain. It really helps in these kinds of practices. So that's from a book called Be Who You Are by Jean Klein. I don't know if it's in print anymore. It's an old book. Yeah, so I'll leave that for your reflection.
Thank you, Luang Por. Han Damayam O Vadagatha Sadhu Karang Kadama Se Sa Anumodami.
Sadhu Luang Por. Luang Por, there's a question regarding the book. Can I just clarify that the title is Be Who You Are by Jean Klein?
Jean, Jean.
Klein.
Klein.
So, brothers and sisters, we're now opening up the floor for questions and answers. Please feel free to click on the raise hand button or type a question, and we'll help you to read it out to Luang Por. Any question at all?
the showstopper. There's a lot there.
And there's a lot to digest today.
Yeah. Thought I'd give you the complete experience.
There's a question here, Luang Por. Are you feeling okay? You're coughing. This person
Yeah, it's an old throat. It's a 75-year-old throat, which does odd things, but I'm pretty healthy. Thank you.
Okay. One more call. Anyone? Any questions at all?
Going once, going twice, going home.
Oh, no, there is one. I think from Miri.
Miri. David, Miri, how are you? Nice to see you.
Okay.
Namaste.
Hello. I don't know if I have a question. I just wanted to say again, thank you for your talks, and just the connection between the availability and the silence and the presence. I've just continued to find very helpful, and I don't know if a little story about the present moment. I might have mentioned it another time, but about 20 years ago, I was at a philosophy conference and we were walking on a walk, in a group walk between Coogee and Bondi, and I didn't know anybody. And I approached a group of young women and sort of introduced myself, and they looked at me and said, "Don't you have any friends?" And I thought, okay, my friend will be the present moment. And there's something about that. It was kind of, even though it was on a worldly level a cruel statement, it put me into this silence. And I thought, my friend will be the present moment. And then just didn't feel lonely anymore. And just the best walk I ever did. And even though I was in a group on my own, as I had the present moment as my friend, and just anyway, just
brilliant. That's very cruel, isn't it? Oh, people do. Yeah, and then loneliness can come and go. It's not a threat. That's what I think I was referring to. It's just loneliness that comes and goes. It's not your real home. You're not threatened. Yeah. Well done. Well done.
Yeah. So that's a just thought. And the other question is: this your last session?
No, we just. I talked to Bita before the session, and I'll be available quite a lot. Sorry, available. We just talked about that. I will book some times, and we'll continue this pattern every fortnight. And then those times because Luang Por Sumedho is going to come to visit us, I'll be busy with him to some extent, but I have the whole day. And but I will be going to Newfoundland with Luang Por in the first. So I won't be around to the first 2 weeks of August, but I'll send you those dates. So we could say probably kind of, except for the first 2 weeks of August, I'm pretty much available. I'm always available. I don't know what to say anymore. I'll be here until when in November?
16th.
Is that when the flight to Asia is? Yeah, until the 16th of November. So let's say until mid-November, I'll be available.
Okay. And thank you, Bita, as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. I asked Bita if she wanted to retire, but she says she's got lots of energy plus lots of friends. So this is good. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll be available.
There you go. That's the word. Flavor of the month. Well, I think there aren't any questions, so there's a lot to ponder in that one. It's quite dense, but perhaps we could finish with the metta chant. Shall we do that?
Yes, please, Luang Por.
Okay. You want to put it up, or
I'll put it up.
yeah. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, everyone, be well.
Thank you, Luang Por.
See you next time. Ciao. Be available. Something like that.
So let us all now pay respects to Luang Por as we take leave. We wish Luang Por well and he recovers from his cough. And to the next session, may we all keep well and healthy and be available. So with 3 bows. First bow, please. Second bow. Third bow. Thank you, Luang Por. See you next month.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to be with you. Ciao. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir.